Back so soon? I knew you would not falter. One more run. One more attempt.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise, and I am rather annoyed today.
Victory is
and I'm annoyed for a reason that you might think is rather strange. I am annoyed because I won. I won this game that you are viewing right now, Hand of Fate. Yes, I know it's quite old, which is part of my point. It's taken me a really long time to actually get around to, well, not beating it, because I haven't beaten it yet. Apparently, there's a final boss that I need to get to, but that's beside the point. I've done it now, I'm allowed to play the sequel. But, onto the point of the video. Random chance is something that I have a very strong love-hate relationship in video games with. I can't grammar today, it's too hot. But in any case, I simultaneously love it and hate it. I love it because it's a way of keeping a game, well, it can keep a game fresh for longer than otherwise would. I hate it because it makes me cry a lot. I'm not even kidding. This game, Hand of Fate, has almost reduced me to tears on multiple occasions. Simply because there's, like, it's like that song, you try your best but you don't succeed. Yeah, and you try your best, you don't succeed because the game just goes, not today. But, once again getting ahead of myself, there's two broad categories of chance in video games that I've kind of identified, and it bears mentioning I have had no formal, like, training or education with, like, video game design, or making them, or I guess analyzing them. I'm pretty much I'm like every other idiot on the internet, I happen to have an opinion. Like, that's how it goes. Hopefully I'm articulate and funny while I do it. But the two broad categories of chance is the random chance which affects the player, as in the character you control, and the random chance which affects broadly the game environment, like the thing you have to deal with, the thing you have to strive against and struggle through, and just essentially what you work through in order to beat the game. And what affects the player with this random chance is things like randomly generated weapons, items, status effects, loot, that kind of thing. So it's like the loot in Diablo or Vermintide, or this game right here. This is why I'm using Hand of Fate as a backdrop, because it's such a good example of this. Everything in this game is determined by chance. And like, well, it's a card game. And the thing that affects the environment is things like procedurally generated environments, it's randomly generated enemies, random enemy spawns, and just anything you face in which it's not going to be the same like the next time you play it, because it's numbers being generated, which causes the challenge to change, and sometimes get insanely difficult. Like the King of Scales right here. Or in this case, it's mostly hard because of what is not random chance. It's the cards you're dealt, quite literally, at the start of the game. And when done well, as I said before, it can extend the life of a game almost infinitely. People, like, I tend to get bored of a game before that happens, but people can spend hundreds or thousands of hours on a game, and simply because of procedural generation, and just, well, you play with the cards you're dealt. I'm going to be saying that phrase a lot, so please try to get used to it. And in some case you make your own luck, because it's a really poor game which relies entirely on random chance. I mean, this game, for instance, Hand of Fate, player skill does factor into it a lot, particularly with combat. You need to know how to dodge, you need to know how to counter, you need to know how to fight specific enemies, and, well, right there you can see that even against really easy ones, you can still mess up. And, oh yeah, I should mention as well, this commentary is added in post, because there's no way I could form coherent thoughts and play this game at the same time. I expected to rage hard. I was lucky this time, I didn't. But in any case, it's like, player skill is what makes up for bad luck. And good luck can only help you so far. And randomly, and as with the enemies, like, it's just having an environment that kind of, like, that is not the same every time. You need to adjust what you do. You can't do the same thing every time, which is a fatal pit trap for many games. It's just, once you've found a way that works, like in Skyrim, if you just charge at everything and swing your sword, you basically win. Especially if you're playing on one of the easier settings. And in From the Depths, for instance, once you have mastered the art of making APS frag guns, arguably you don't need to use anything else, because even with the nerfs that the developers have made, frags are still incredibly overpowered. It's just how the game's physics work. One fragment does at least 1 damage, whereas other kinds of weapons is just, I don't know, wouldn't spit out multiple things doing at least 1 damage. Complicated math and stuff, but with procedure generation, what sparked this video was Hand of Fate right here, and largely because I was having such trouble with the specific card, the King of Scales, the last king in the deck that you have to face, simply because it seemed bloody impossible. Just a combination of the curses that you start with, and just the kind of cards that you would end up being played at you, just made it seem impossible. And so I looked up how to beat him, or like a reliable way to beat him, and basically it's get certain items you have no guarantee of getting, and basically sheer dumb luck. Just, you can change it a bit, but for the most part you just have to get lucky, which irritated me immensely, because frankly I want to get on to the sequel of this game. I've enjoyed it thoroughly, but time to move on. Also, it was bugging me that I kept losing all the time. So, if you can only win through pure luck, and your skill ceases to matter, that's when this is just not on. As in, like, it might as well not be a game. You might as well just be gambling. Which is where we get to the third we shall not mention category of random chance, which is something that many people are bothered about right now, which is loot crates, which is essentially like the randomly generated loot in most games, except you pay for it. That's not what this video is about. I'm not going to talk to that. I don't buy into that at all. Even though I have purchased a loot crate type thing once or twice, I can tell you right now it wasn't worth it. Don't do it. Whether it's cosmetic or not, it's just, no, it is not worth it. It's just, you're not going to stick with a game long enough that you have to have, say, in Path of Exile, a Weta follow you around. Even though that's not random chance, I wanted a Weta, I bought one. That's more fair. That is good free-to-play model. But, just randomly generated loot that you have to pay for? No, don't touch that. Anyway, so, back onto this. The only reason that I finally beat this stupid, fantastic game is because I got lucky. I was playing as a character who, essentially, their maximum health goes up with every single enemy you kill, and you might have noticed right at the start of this video, about 3-4 minutes or so of me essentially rigging the deck. Basically customizing it so I just have as many easy combat encounters as possible. And that is what sailed through here. Like, spoiler alert, I win in the end. I'm probably going to cut out the middle of this footage just so you can get to the good bit, because this took longer than I thought. Which is another thing with, I guess a problem with anything that's procedurally generated or just randomly determined is just, a choice. I don't know. It's uncertain, the constant uncertainty, which, on the bright side, keeps the tension up, but on the downside it means that you have no idea what you're in for, or whether you can even do it, or whether it'll take the entire freaking day to do it. But I'm starting to forget my original point here. Is basically, if there are any developers watching this, for crying out loud, have random chance affect the environment more than the player. Because, which game was it? There was a game which, I think, no, it is my gripe with pretty much every single hack and slash game. We're talking Diablo clone here. Things like Diablo, or Torchlight, or Grim Dawn, or what's another one? The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing, Victor Vran, or even things like Vermintide, is just randomly generated loot will eventually annoy me to pieces. What? It does that because it's, in most cases, it doesn't make sense. Because, well, for the start, enemies, why are enemies dropping items of all kinds? That's always a logical thing I've never been able to get past. And the second thing is, what you... think it from the perspective of a video game protagonist, what you carry into the danger zone is too important to be left to chance. Like, if you imagine, like, a soldier in real life. He is prepping to go to a combat zone. Does he roll dice in order to determine what he takes? No, that's really stupid. He will figure out ahead of time what he needs, and he will take what he needs to not only survive, but to complete his objective, to win. And it's just, some games, just, it doesn't work like that. I always liked, and of course I've played well over 1,000 hours of Skyrim, I'm a little bit biased towards that. I'm a little bit biased towards crafting in games, up to a point, because it just makes a lot more sense. Like, you're an adventurer, you're the hero. I think you'd much rather trust the things that you've made with your own hands, that you know inside and out. It makes far more sense than just using whatever you randomly find, unless you're desperate. And a lot of randomly generated and procedurally generated loot just doesn't evoke that feeling of desperation. There might be a tiny bit of that right at the beginning of the game, but then after a while you've just got lots of, well, you're fully equipped essentially, and also loaded down with money. That's another thing. It's just, in real life, or the equivalent of, the way you would equip yourself to the best of your ability is you would buy the stuff, or you'd make it, or a combination of the two. Just buy the stuff and make what you need out of the stuff you've bought, for instance. Which again, in Skyrim, that's pretty much all I've ever done. Is basically, I buy the stuff I need in order to, like, well, smith stuff. Smithing is overpowered in Skyrim. We all know this. And on the note of desperation, Hand of Fate is really good at just that kind of desperate feeling. Because the loot is, you randomly find it, rather than it being randomly generated, so there's no +1 sword of rat smashing or something like that. It's just items, and everyone is unique, and you know exactly what it is you would want once you've played the game for a bit. And just that feeling of constant desperation is something this game catches really well with almost everything. It's like, you run out of gold, you can't buy food, therefore you starve to death. Or it's like you've got 1,000,000 curses, but you don't have the gold to, like, get rid of it. It's like all that kind of many things all conspiring against you. Because the game is, according to, like, well, the card master himself, the game is fair. It, particularly with this last little campaign with the King of Scales, it doesn't feel fair. It really doesn't. And that's one of the big gripes with any kind of game that relies on random chance, be it aimed at the player or at the environment. There are times in which it's just like you raise your hands up to the heavens and just say, well, that's absolute rubbish. That's not fair at all. What could I have done? And the answer is, sometimes there's nothing you can do and you just have to fail. Which, like, on the one hand I like, because it mimics real life. You cannot deal with everything that comes your way. Sometimes the universe just craps on you, and you just have to pick up your chin and carry on and deal with the loss. Except that when I play a video game, arguably, I'm looking to have fun or be entertained, and just to essentially just have a good, satisfying time. And if the chance of that happening is, like, less than 1, like, I'm not saying it has to be, like, absolutely perfect all the time, that's not a reasonable demand, but if, like, the chance is good that I'm, instead of having a good time, just going to, like, have a dreadful experience instead, it's like, why would you play a game like that? And I know some people will argue me on that, just perhaps like, oh, you don't like challenge. Why don't you like, I don't know, filthy casual, scrub, all that kind of stuff. But life's too short to rage at a computer program. It really is, and I was getting really frothy in playing this game right here, and just trying to figure out how to beat the damn King of Scales. Because he's a dick. Just warning you, if you're thinking of playing The Hand of Fate, the original, he is a dick. He is a real dick. Can't emphasize that enough. So, arguably, I guess, once again losing my train of thought, I should really make better cue cards for this, but I like consistency in games. Like, if I do a thing in a game, like, a corresponding thing should happen. And likewise, so if, I don't know, it's just a degree of predictability you still need in pretty much every video game. Otherwise, it's just, well, what are you even doing? You can't have it too predictable, because, like, I don't know, if it's too predictable, sometimes you just, well, it gets boring. That's the main thing. And just, maybe not even boring, it's just you kind of lose the will to keep playing. I have a 3-part series on Dark Souls 3 on this channel that I started playing, and I just stopped. Which was a shame, because I enjoyed it for a while, and it was pretty well received by my standards at the time, and I just had to stop, because Dark Souls has no procedural generation, like, it's not what it does, and it is weirdly predictable in the sense that, because everything is placed in by the developers, it's just, well, if you get surprised in that game, it's because the developers probably intended it to happen, like a giant spider monster lands on your face from the ceiling kind of thing. But at the same time, it's just, you know what's happening next. It's more misery. For you. And I just lost the will to keep playing. I wasn't mad, I wasn't sad, I wasn't bad at the game especially, although a lot of people would say I was. Hell, I say I am bad at that game. Well, that's because it just, you lose, the worst thing a game can be is dull. And Dark Souls got dull simply because, even though I was unable to get past the second boss, I looked into the future and I saw what was coming. It was just more of the same, more beating your head against a brick wall in the vague hope that you'd get past it.
More than anything.
And because that depends entirely on your will to play the game and your skill, it wasn't going to happen. I didn't have the patience to get good enough, and I lost the will completely. Largely because the second boss kept shoving his butt in the camera, and so I couldn't see what I was doing. But that brings me back to Hand of Fate. It's like, I've persevered with this, like, even though I wanted to give up many times, because I knew that even though failure was by far the most likely option, there was chance of success was more than 0. So I knew there was a hope, a rather faint hope of me actually beating it, and the hope got realized, really. Like, it happened. I managed to beat it, and it's like, wow, okay, that happened. So again, it's just, I guess, random generation can encourage perseverance, which goes back to my first point, is that it can extend the life of a game, well, considerably. Because if this game didn't have like random chance in it, and frankly, this Hand of Fate is impossible to imagine without it. It's just, it wouldn't be a completely different game, but say if it didn't have that, and the King of Scales game, I guess you could call it, was still bloody impossible. It's just, well, I would have given up long ago, because I'm like, well, I essentially need to keep playing this until I'm good at it, and can I be bothered? So I guess my frustrations with this particular game is just, well, I guess the moral is, it is better to get salty because of random chance screwing you over than bored because a game is just so over-the-top difficult that you, like, it's not... Like, and that's a personal thing, how much time you invest into a game. Like, before you decide enough is enough, that you're not having fun anymore, and you don't have time in your life in order to get good. So, in this particular case, because I knew luck is part of it, I might be able to luck my way through. And I guess I did, really. You will have noticed that my health is a lot higher than when I started, and just I keep getting lucky in this run. That's basically it. Like, skill comes into it, dodging like a madman, and just making pragmatic decisions, like buy food whenever possible, because, like, running out of gold is a royal pain, but running out of food means you die. That's essentially the distinction. And so, I guess just to wrap this thing up, it's just, procedural generation should, well, for one thing, I infinitely prefer it to affect the environment rather than player, because randomly picking what enemies you fight and the locations you're in, that is cool. That's fresh and interesting, keeps the game nice and, like, nice and worth playing. Okay? Whereas things that affect the player directly, like in this game, curses are a terrible thing, because they're really hard to get rid of. You have to essentially get lucky with how much gold you have and whether there's a priest nearby. And, well, and another thing is just, again, with the Diablo style gameplay, is just, if you're, and remember, like, in the old days of, what was it? Was it 2012? I can't remember the year Diablo 3 came out. It's just, Inferno difficulty was almost impossible because it depended on whether you were unlucky with enemy generation and also what kind of gear you were lucky enough to get. And the vast majority of people were not lucky with gear at all. So I guess the overall message of this video is, don't get mad when random chance screws you over, because there's no point in getting mad. And just, if you keep going with it, like, eventually you can get lucky. Or you can get really unlucky and never get lucky. I hope that doesn't happen to you. So, thank you for watching this incredibly rambly, even by my standards, video. I hope I made at least half the points I was hoping to make. And, well, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I will see you next time in whatever game or thought comes next. Sometimes thoughts just happen in my brain, it's how it goes. Farewell!